Let's go to Tasmania now, where Tasmanian Minister for Resources Felix Ellis and a coalition of Tasmanian timber mills, they've accused the Victorian Premier Dan Andrews of pillaging resources from Tasmania after shutting down Victoria's own native logging industry, which was a surprise in the Andrews budget. Joining me is Liberal Senator for Tasmania and Shadow Environment, Fisheries and Forestry Minister Jonathan Duniam. Senator, g'day. Welcome to the program. We had Dan Andrews' shock announcement in his budget 8 weeks ago that the native logging industry would shut down by 2024, 6 years earlier than planned. And we now found out that the Hayfield Mill, which is partially owned by the government, has been importing logs from Tasmania instead. How's that gone down in Tassie?
Well, I think you could guess pretty badly. The reality is, Steve, that across Australia, the native forestry industry is world's best. It's done according to world's best practice. It's based on science. It is based on fact. We have decisions being made by people like Dan Andrews, Labor premiers who are trying to outgreen the Greens with ideological decisions. And the end result is this. And of course, the Victorian Labor government have gone and borrowed a whole heap of money against the taxpayers' dime and are using that money to subsidise businesses to shut down and exit the industry. Those businesses are now looking to places like Tasmania to take timber from Tasmania, ship it back across Bass Strait so they can mill it in their mills. This is a terrible outcome, and it will not yield better environmental outcomes. It will actually lead to worse environmental outcomes because while we're taking the Victorian resource out of the equation, the demand remains, and we're going to be sending that offshore to places like Borneo and to the Congo Basin. Dan Andrews is all about politics and ideology, not good outcomes.
Well, clear this up for me, because I obviously am no expert on the timber industry, but can't Tasmania mill its own timber and then sell it as an export, if you like, to a place like Victoria?
Oh, absolutely right. And that's what each state in our federation should be doing. I mean, we've got a very proud timber industry here that's existed for a couple of 100 years. And we, as I said before, do it to world's best practice. And you've got contractors now who are competing against Victorian businesses who are being pushed out at an accelerated rate of the Victorian timber industry with government subsidies, who are now looking for resources because all of these businesses in Victoria have contracts against equipment, finance contracts that they need to keep paying off, and they're looking for resource to be able to continue to do business and pay their employees. So they're using this money to come on down to Tassie, take the timber back to Victoria and mill it. We can do it here. The end result means, though, that these Tasmanian businesses who can't compete because they're not subsidised are going to find themselves out of work. And this is against the backdrop of bad science, in fact, no science from the Victorian Labor government. Only 0.06% of our native forest estate in any given year is harvested. That's 6 out of every 10,000 trees. They make it sound like we are denuding the landscapes, and therefore his decision to shut down this industry is a good one. It is not. It is bad. People still want their coffee tables, their staircases, their floorboards, and all of the bits of furniture made out of hardwood native timber. But we're going to be ripping it out of forests in the Amazon and bringing it in here, and no one will have jobs at the end of the day.
Well, it seems to me that Andrews and his crowd are able to say, "Oh, look how clean and green we are. We've stopped cutting down native timber," and then on the other hand, they're buying it from somewhere else.
That's exactly what it is, and this is the madness of the ideology of Labor governments, and we saw it in Western Australia as well because they banned native forest harvesting there. So you've got 2 Labor states, and you've got to remember there's this group within the Australian Labor Party called the Labor Environment Action Network, and they exist right across the party. State by state, they are forcing the Labor Party to abandon what is a proud, science-based, sustainable industry, which is a part of our economy. It supports 52,000 jobs across our regional communities. And you know what? They're going to make the federal government, through these changes to the laws that Tanya Plibersek is proposing, to shut down native forestry nationally. That means we won't harvest a single hardwood tree here from our native forest estate. It means we'll be importing 100% of it from countries, as I said before, throughout South America and Southeast Asia, where they don't care about the environment, where they don't base their decisions on science, and to boot, we'll be shipping all of those jobs that we've canned here in Australia offshore. This is a lose-lose for Australia, and it is all because of people like Dan Andrews and former Premier Mark McGowan trying to out-green the Greens to hang on to inner city seats because that's what they believe is right, when fundamentally they couldn't be more wrong.
You speak a lot of sense, Senator Duniam. Thank you very much for your time tonight. That is madness.